Hong Kong is one of the most expensive places in the world to live and play. But in this hustle-bustle city, one neighborhood stands above all the rest. Welcome to Causeway Bay. It's home to some of the world's most expensive real estate property, and one family, the Lees, has been dominating the district since the 1920s. It all started when Hyson Lee bought a strip of land from the Jardine Group in 1923 and founded what is known today as Hyson Development, the biggest landlord in the area. Perhaps it's the Lee family name, which means profit in business and sharpness of blade. Hyson Development Group is now chaired by Irene Lee, the granddaughter of Hyson Lee. Today, she shares the story of her family, which in many ways is the story of Hong Kong.
And oh, how times have changed. Shopping is the new form of entertainment these days. Lee Theatre is still called Lee Theatre at Lee Gardens, a nod to the Lee family and the bet they made here in Causeway Bay many, many years ago. Today we talk to Irene Lee, granddaughter of family patriarch Hyson Lee. You're watching Asia's Business. For most of Hong Kong, they know the Lee family very well. It is part of Hong Kong's history. Tell us what you know, what you remember of grandfather and just this wonderful heritage called the Lee family in Hong Kong.
Well, I only remember grandfather from my father because grandfather died very young. He died in his 40s, and that was in 1938. We were particularly close to the legacy because we actually lived in grandfather's house. And this is where the furniture is from. It was 74 Kennedy Road. Now it's become Bamboo Grove, which is part of our residential portfolio. Grandfather came from a poor village, and when he then was sent to the US, to San Francisco, to study, he learned his English there, and then he was then promptly sent back after about 6 or 7 years. He became a businessman very early in his life. Then he died in 38, and grandmother, his wife, Wong Lan Fong was his name, and you will notice that one of the streets is actually named after his wife, so he must have adored his wife. So it was Hyson Avenue, named after himself, of course, later on, and then, of course, Wong Lan Fong. Now, all this happened, though, post his death, because he died in 38, and at the time of his death, this was still a hill. This was still East Point Hill.
So growing up as a child, so very much enriched in the family history, was there a lot of responsibility as a child to know that this is where you came from?
Probably in a softer way. We always felt very proud to be a Lee. See, our Chinese name, Lee, is actually, Lee is a billion Lees out there, but the Chinese way of writing our Lee is a very special Lee. If you say this Lee in Chinese, you would know there's only one family. So I think with that, you do feel a certain sense of responsibility because you are representing a family and you always be identified, so you better behave.
I mean, your grandfather really started the family riches, but it was your great-grandfather who went to San Francisco,
yes.
Really an adventurer of his day, during a time when it was illegal to emigrate out of China.
That's right.
To make his fortune, and he did that.
Absolutely.
And he brought his family to Hong Kong, and that helped pave the way for your grandfather, Hyson, who took the opportunities that his father gave him,
yes,
expanded it. Your father then took the lessons of his father,
yes,
and also expanded it.
Correct.
Was that family responsibility, that legacy of growing what was given to you, ingrained in you as children?
Yes, but not in a business sense.
Okay.
We were never asked or told that when you grow up, you must work for the family. There was never, ever explicit or not explicit. We had a very, very strong family culture. We're from the southern part of China, and for some reason we are very, very ingrained in us. Southern part of China was very poor, so we always had to be thrifty. We always had to finish what was on our plate. We never waste. We have to be modest. Don't be flashy. Don't give interviews.
Unless you want
low
to.
Key, be low key. That was always very important
Yes.
to us.
Yeah.
So I think that is really more the culture than you must go into business
Right.
and expand the business. There was never any expectation.
Just getting back to your grandfather, he actually was a very dramatic tale of, in his business as well, he also had the monopoly of trading opium when it was a legal
Yes.
trade.
Refinement.
Refinement in Macau.
Correct.
Talk about what happened there and why his life so tragically ended early.
Well, he was shot, so he was assassinated in his 40s. So that was 1938. And at the time, my father was already in England. See, he repeated the whole education process. Can you imagine? My father was born in 1910. He was sent away to school in England, I'm sure on a boat, when he was 9 years old.
Oh, wow.
Together with his older brother and two sisters, two girls. So, such foresight, isn't it? This is back in the 20s.
Yeah.
So by the time my father came back, it was for the funeral of his father. So the story was never uncovered. We never found the assassin. The family just moved on. We never really talked very much about it. All we knew was grandfather was shot and killed. So yes, it was dramatic, and we certainly, it was very difficult for the family because we had bought this hill. It was very leveraged. So my grandmother then, she had to leave the family. So she, Mrs. Wong Lan Fong, she was actually the head of the household because the children were quite young. See, my father was only 18.
So here is a woman who just lost her husband, and she then decides that this is the direction in which she wants
Correct.
to take the family business.
That's right.
Property.
Correct. And it wasn't until much later, because Lee Theatre was in 1925. So you can imagine, quite a few years later, that they decided to excavate and push the mountain into the sea to reclaim the land, which is now Causeway Bay, because it was just a hill, it was East Point Hill.
But your family, very much visionaries for Hong Kong.
So.
Almost 100 years on, not quite, but almost 100 years on, acknowledging that property was going to be the brunt of the family business and really be the base
Yes.
of the family fortune.
Yes, and to have chosen Causeway Bay is an interesting choice. No one will ever know why he chose Causeway Bay rather than somewhere in Kowloon or even Central. I mean, in those days, I'm sure it was all pretty open, isn't it? But he chose Causeway Bay. He probably, had a very good relationship with the Jardines. As a family, we the old Hongs, we had very, very close relationships. So it was probably, something that he had a vision for. And we certainly want to continue this vision in Causeway Bay. We feel very much Causeway Bay is our home. So it's all part of our portfolio.
And let's talk about your portfolio, because coming up, we've got a lot of developers who are looking overseas for their next big deal, and yet for Hyson Group, what does the future hold? That's coming back in a few moments from now. Stay with us.
This is the beginning of Lee Gardens, and if you see Lan Fong Road,
Yes.
that is the name of grandmother.
Ah, this is Grandmother's Road.
Correct.
This is really the epicenter.
This is the beginning of our, we've got three areas to the triangular definition. So this is the beginning of our high-end retail. So we're trying to create a sense of community. So when you come here, you say, gosh, we are in the Lee Gardens area, rather than I'm just in some shopping center.
Wonderful. Well, let's go in.
Yes.
Let's see what it's all about.
So we actually have a district vision. When I first took over a couple of years ago, we decided to actually articulate our district vision. What does it mean to be in this area? Not just another very busy Causeway Bay crowded shopping area where you run in and run out and do your shopping. We wanted to feel a sense of identity, a sense of community, and most importantly, a sense of space.
Yes.
With lots of greens. Where do you see the avenue? When actually our French tenants, and we have a lot of French tenants, you can see from our
Yes.
shop, when they come, they actually feel very, very able to identify with our area, because it is almost like the Champs-Élysées with the trees and the greens, and you can actually see the sky. And I think that's really important for our brand, because we did a lot of thinking on branding.
Yeah.
And branding for us means we want to be different. We don't want to be me too.
Yeah.
And we want to have this, when you enter Hysan Avenue, I want people to feel we are in Lee Gardens.
Well,
And that means something to them.
let's take a walk down the Champs-Élysées of Hong Kong.
This was the place where Chinese opera was performed.
Yes.
And you see the stage? It's a revolving stage. It's the first in Asia.
Oh, wow.
It's a revolving stage. So you can actually change from this scene to the other scene on the stage.
And it must have been so different and so new for the audience back then.
Absolutely. And then, over the years, it became the venue for Miss Hong Kong pageants. So that was very exciting. And then became a cinema. Now this is
the old theater?
This was how it was. All faded with the signatures now. In here, in the old days, this is how you issue tickets, and you ring the bell.
This is it. So for the to get the people in the seats, this is how you calculate how many
tickets, and this is probably the chop to legitimize your ticket.
Oh my gosh, a typewriter.
That's right. Film footage counter. Can you imagine? And look
goodness.
at the tickets.
Okay, so we've got a tour here, and
with the school children, that's the idea, is we want to be able to share the history, not our history, really, it's Hong Kong's history, and it's so important for the younger generation to feel a sense of identity. And Causeway Bay, everyone knows Causeway Bay is a place to shop and to have dinner, but they don't really understand the history. So this whole history from there of East Point Hill until current is all exhibited here.
how does it feel to know that your family has changed the skyline of Hong Kong so much?
A sense of Hong Kong's progress more than anything else, I think. That's important. I think we don't quite think in terms of what our family has done to or for Hong Kong. It's wonderful to see how Hong Kong has changed.
So this is really the family compound.
Correct. Where grandfather and all his family, and there were many of them, there were 7 boys and 8 girls.
And your mother would host fantastic parties.
Correct, but that would be much later when they got married in 1949.
Okay.
So they got married and they were housed on the 3rd floor, and my uncle was housed on the 2nd floor, and that's the entertainment public area floor.
And what do you remember? Who were the most notable guests that your family hosted?
Well, we hosted a lot of business people, of course, because my father, had a lot of friends and associates, but we also had people like Kissinger, Nixon. So we had that just at the beginning of the opening of China. So that would be quite historical, wouldn't it? And this is the map of where we have been walking around, and I look at that all the time to see, how we should place our buildings and how we should position ourselves.
And how should you position yourselves? What's your vision?
Our vision is we have a district vision. We feel that we are an area which is quite unusual, that when people when they drive through to Hysan Avenue, they feel they have arrived at the Lee Gardens. And the Lee Gardens actually offer very, very different things. We offer everything from the high-end retail experience and A-class office building, which is where we are, and that whole lovely avenue with all the trees, to where we came from, Hysan Place, which is our newest building, young, trendy, funky, buzzy with it, where a lot of the young people want to actually work, because on top of it is 15 floors of grade A office buildings. To the other side of the triangle, which is Lee Theatre and Leighton Centre, which is the urban lifestyle, young but more urban.
Do you have any plans to expand beyond Hong Kong?
We always say that we will look at all opportunities, but I think first and foremost, you need to build a solid foundation. Solid foundation is you get the culture right, you get your management team right, you get all your skill set right, and you make sure you capitalize on your biggest crown and the jewel. For us, we are very, very dominant in Causeway Bay. We're the biggest landlord, so we want to make sure we make sure it has a footprint, our footprint.
Now, a lot of your peers, a lot of your property developer rivals are now looking at Hong Kong this year and looking at perhaps a significant drop in rents and property prices because of the property curbs. They're seeing that perhaps in China as well. Many are expanding overseas. They're looking to the United States. They're looking to Europe. Why aren't you looking?
We will always look at opportunities. However, we feel in Causeway Bay we are still reasonably resilient. Causeway Bay, at least in our portfolio, we have made sure we have a balance of not just the offerings, from the high end to the younger urban chic end, but we also make sure we service the local community as well as the tourists. And the tourists includes, of course, a very big slice of mainlanders. However, we don't just pursue and focus on the mainlanders. They are a very, very important part. But for us, we have always focused on our local, loyal customers. So for us, it is very important to have a balanced portfolio and a balanced user portfolio as well.
When you take a look at Hong Kong's future in the decade to come, what do you see when it comes to the property market?
I think the property market, given the supply and demand, will continue to be strong. Of course, they will have ebb and flow, but I think it is strong. And again, I have to look at Causeway Bay for us. The retail side will be strong, but it also is not going to be strong because it is going to be strong. You need to continuously enhance. We will not stop to enhance our properties. We have new buildings coming out, like Hyacinth Place. We are just about to develop Sunning Plaza and Sunning Court, which will be happening in the next few years. But at the same time, we will not stop at making sure every single building gets updated and enhanced on a continuous basis. So I think we are optimistic. We feel Hong Kong will go through, of course there will be bubbles, of course there will be different ups and downs, but we feel very confident that in Causeway Bay we will continue to be resilient. It's really a mix of who we are and what we are.
And it's all about this. Welcome back to Asia's Business with our conversation with Irene Lee as we continue to talk about just life, your family history, the legacy of your family history on Hong Kong. And now we arrive in this place. This is your office. And a very historical moment as well for Hysan Group because you are the first chairwoman of this publicly traded company, your third generation. Of course, there's fourth and fifth as well. Tell me about how important having this role is for you and for this company.
I feel very honored to be asked to come back. I also feel very prepared for this role. I have been in business, I have been working as a professional for other people, for other firms, for the last 30 plus years. So I do feel while I'm family and while this is still has a lot of family values in this business, I actually bring a professional management perspective to the company. So I feel very prepared for this, and I certainly don't feel it's a burden. I don't feel it's a weight on my shoulder at all. The culture, the directions are very clear. It's always been clear what we want to be as a family and as a company. So I think it is very much carrying on the legacy. We want to be progressive, we want to be professional, we want to develop Causeway Bay into a very, very specific destination, and we want to capitalize being the biggest landlord in Causeway Bay.
What's your vision for this company in the decade to come? As property goes, we don't know where the property market is going to go in Hong Kong. Also, China is very much part of Hong Kong's future.
The group is heavily invested in Causeway Bay. So for us, it is very important to maximize the opportunities here. There's still plenty of opportunities in Causeway Bay, not just on the retail. It's famous for retail. I do think that we have a massive opportunity on the commercial side, on the office side, because Central is very, very crowded. Rents, until recently, have absolutely gone through the roof. It has normalized somewhat. However, the business has to migrate towards our area. So I think we need to be prepared for that. We need to be a credible alternative to Central on the commercial office side. So retail, yes, we are very, very big, but we can't sit on our laurels. The retail side has to be a destination, because you don't want to be the same as Central. We don't want to be the same as any other mall. We need to be a little bit different so that people feel it is a destination. And if you do your retail well, you do your food and beverage well, it'll automatically also bode well for your commercial office offerings.
The fortune of Hong Kong is going to really determine the fortune of Hysan Group, because you two are intrinsically tied together. And yet the future is still murky. You've got Singapore and Hong Kong vying both to be this region's premier financial hub. That competition continues. Then you also have more of China influence and just the amalgamation of Hong Kong and China together as one unit. Where do you see Hysan Group fit into all of these different issues?
In the medium term, we are still very committed to Hong Kong, and really in the shorter to medium term to Causeway Bay. We do look at opportunities outside Hong Kong. We look at opportunities in China and elsewhere. So it is a continuous thing, but first and foremost, I need to make sure my company culture is right, the management team is well skilled, and we have the bench strength to take it to other areas. We are an investment company, a property investment company, so that is one skill set. We're not a developer. We're primarily in retail and commercial. We have some residential, so we're not big in residential. So there are many other skill sets that if we need to build out, we need time to build those out. So we can't leap to because everyone else is doing it, or we on a business side, we believe that there's still plenty to do in Causeway Bay, but we are looking at outside opportunities. We always do. We have never discounted that.
And when you look at even your own bench strength, as a female leadership role, taking a position as chairwoman, being on the board, this is something that many people say Hong Kong really needs to catch up on. How are you growing the pipeline of women executives in your company? How do you see yourself as someone that women executives can look up to and really learn lessons from?
We have a very good bench strength of women executives. Now, I also try to encourage more, and I want to mentor more women. I have always played an important role in that. I think it's very, very important to mentor and make sure women grow. And being a chairman of the company will put me in that position to not just mentor my own people. I'd like to play a bigger role in Hong Kong.
You're part of Hong Kong's history, integral part of the fabric of Hong Kong. Where do you see the next 90 years from now?
Oh, I think Hong Kong will change, and we need to change with it. I think Hong Kong is very much part of China, and we need to understand that in the bigger picture. I think in the past, Hong Kong has been much more protected. Now Hong Kong we have to understand we are China. So we need to grow with how China grows.
Irene Lee, it was such a pleasure to talk with you. I know you don't do it often,
Angie.
And if at all, so to do it first with us for Asia's Business is such a pleasure.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you.